We appreciate you taking part in today's episode. Take this chance to reimagine a better future by joining a community of futurists who strive for a remarkable world. Be a part of this growing network and contribute to making the world a more positive place. Visit thefuturistsociety.net and subscribe to the show so you don't miss a drop of hopeful futurism.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Futurist Society, where as always, we are talking in the present, but talking about the future. I have a really special guest for you today. Sam White is an innovator in the space of climate technology and green technology, which is very much in the news today, and it's very in vogue. So Sam, I know you're doing a lot of interesting things with recycling right now, but you have a whole history in this space, and I'd love to hear more about that. But let's talk about recycling, because I think that's the most pertinent. We're in the center of biotech right now, and you're actually recycling a lot of the lab waste that's being used in the area. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. I'll give you a little history on why it's become a big issue today. First of all, healthcare and biotech is a big part of this. Puts out more emissions than airlines. They put out more emissions than shipping. And it's because of all the waste and the energy-intensive machinery that is required to keep the freezers going and all the experiments running. And a lot of people don't talk about that side of healthcare and biotech because it's all about medicine, but has a big impact on our climate. And in 2018, I don't know if you remember when China decided to stop taking our waste. When China stopped taking our waste, the biggest collateral damage came to the biotech and pharma space because single stream recyclers, they were hauling all the single-use plastic from biotech and pharma, and they sent it to China. When that stopped, they stopped recycling anything that looked like a lab product, including perfectly clean plastic, like the packaging for the pipette tips. Those pipette tip boxes just end up either incinerated or in landfill. The media bottles, again, it looks like a lab product. It's not going to be recycled today. So Green Labs Recycling is trying to bridge the gap by not only recycling, because I know a lot of your viewers and you yourself have some pessimism around, does this plastic actually get recycled into products? So I have brought with me something that kind of helps us answer that question around transparency and recycling. So what we do when we collect all this plastic is we have a manufacturing line in Leominster, Massachusetts, where we have a mold where we manufacture this benchtop waste bin for scientists to be able to deposit their tips. They open the slider, and you'll notice if you look carefully at all the streaks, we don't add any coloring, and every box comes out a different color depending on the mix of colors from the pipette tip boxes that we're recycling.
So for those of you guys who are just listening in, it's a box that's very similar to a lot of the biohazard boxes that are predominant in biotechnology. And the outside has this mottled appearance, almost like tie-dye, because of all of the different, I'm assuming, plastics coming from it and being made into the box. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's like a sharps container, but we didn't want to go through the regulatory hurdles of calling it a sharps container. And the scientists love it because they can now see what their plastic is getting turned into every day.
So I'm a big optimist when it comes to technology, and I would consider myself a techno-optimist. And I hear so much pessimism around recycling, even though it's this thing that's been around for so long. A lot of my friends that are in the green tech space say that the percentage of stuff that actually gets recycled is so low. and they're really almost like disillusioned with the whole recycling process. Can you just give us a little bit more insight into recycling at large and maybe even biotechnology recycling to give us a little sense of hope around the recycling process? Because I know it sounds so intuitive that, okay, rather than create new technology and use it and throw it away in a landfill, we can reuse that and it becomes better for the environment. But the actual adoption of that practice is not as rose-colored as I would think it is as a new person. So you being in the industry, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, in general, the whole industry is focused on large-scale recycling, and that requires expensive equipment for sorting. It requires a huge amount of space for putting the different resins in its place and then shipping it all over the world, because the margins are so small, and the price that you get for the different resins, whether it's PET or polypropylene, it fluctuates depending on how much they're producing, how much plastic they're producing from petroleum, how much plastic they're getting from recycled plastic, how much China is a big player in determining that price point, because they used to take our waste. Now they have their own in-country capacity. So the price for what you get for recycled plastic really tanked last year. So it's all about huge volumes to be able to make money in this space. And when you're talking about such huge volumes, it's hard to get insights on what percentage of that plastic gets recycled. With Green Labs Recycling, we've tried to completely reverse everything about recycling. It's small scale. It's focused on a particular industry, life sciences. We have humans who are sorting the plastic. We work with Minuteman ARC to bring us fantastic people to help with the sorting. And once it's sorted and granulated, we put it into injection molding, and we have videos of raw footage of this granulated plastic getting heated and being poured into the different cavities to make the sharps container. And it's not a professional video because we want to show that recycling can be transparent. Mm-hmm. You can see what the plastic is being turned into. And I think it's really powerful because it's not only important for transparency in recycling, but we're making some good money on this. We used to sell this plastic at 35 cents a pound. Now we sell this product at $12 a pound. Mm. So now that we're manufacturing product using recycled plastic, you all of a sudden look at climate change, which is causing drought, which is causing shipping issues in the Panama Canal, political issues that are make the supply chain of importing a lot of products very challenging. Mm-hmm. And this is I hope it serves as a model for the future for manufacturers to start thinking about, well, maybe I can make this cheaper in my backyard using recycled plastic.
Yeah, so I love that. I think as someone who's a follower of this tangentially, zooming out, what I see across many different industries is this idea of becoming more local, becoming more niche, and rather than it being a production of scale, you're able to offer a profit for people, including your own business, because it's such a bespoke product, right?
Yes.
And so So that's awesome. I like the fact that you're focusing on biotechnology, because living in Kendall Square in the center of biotechnology, I see it all the time, and it's nice to hear that that kind of stuff is happening.
Yeah, so we were shocked at the demand for this product, not just because of because it's useful and the utilitarian part of it, but the message that they're purchasing something that is more sustainable. So we're shocked at how much demand there is for this product.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I mean, I know that in the traditional recycling, it's not like that. There's a good portion of that goes to a landfill, and I hope that different innovations can happen similar to your company that's able to overcome those hurdles from a large scale production standpoint. That's awesome. No, I love that. The idea of climate tech is so much more than recycling, though, and I did want to speak with you about your history being in the green tech space. I know that you helped co-found one of the largest incubators for green technology. So tell us a little bit more about that. And then I also want to talk about where do you see the innovation coming from? What are you most excited about in this space?
Sure. So back in 2010, we were deploying a new cooling technology as part of a startup called Promethean Power. Long story short, there's a big issue in India where 230,000 milk-producing villages in India only get 7 hours of power in a 24-hour period. And we developed a type of battery that instead of storing electrons, we're storing ice. And today, if we have over 95,000 farmers being able to cold store their milk without diesel generators, even though they have only 7 hours of power. And we have this cooling technology that enables all these farmers to triple their income. They're investing in more cows. The Nestle's of the world, the food processors are being able to collect more quality milk. And there's less pollution in these villages because they're no longer using diesel generators. So it's a quadruple win for the consumers, the processors, the environment, and the farmers. And from that, when my soon-to-be wife got a sabbatical from Brigham and Women's down the street, she came to live with me in India. And when you go outside in India, it's like a wall of heat. And I grabbed some cooling prototypes that we were initially using in Mumbai in our warehouse that we weren't going to use. And I imagine you're walking down the streets of Mumbai in India, and there are tailors on the street making clothes or fixing clothes. And I asked one of them, could you wrap these spheres in this fabric? And so that created a company called Nano Ice Cooling Necklace, and I'll give that to you. It's still cold from the freezer when I took it out an hour ago.
Yeah, so for those of you guys who are just listening, he just handed me this packet of almost like beads, but they're still cold. And we had been setting up for at least an hour and a half beforehand. So pretty interesting stuff. So cold at that point, huh?
Yeah, you can put this on.
Okay.
You can stretch it over your head.
Okay. Like this?
Yeah.
That's what you do?
Over your neck.
Okay.
Because the blood that gets to your brain is right at these arteries.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's cool, man.
And so it turns out that people with autoimmune diseases, the heat really impacts them more than anyone else. Mm-hmm. And the correspondence that I have with people who say it's changed their lives, they can garden for the first time without worrying about the heat. Mm-hmm. They can take walks for the first time without worrying about the heat. It's remarkable what, a simple little innovation can do for people.
And I like that about a lot of the green tech that I see. It's that these small little changes that are happening that have this profound impact. And I feel like it's much more of the innovation that like we think about with American innovation, like somebody starting this up in like their garage and it becomes this big company. Nowadays, you know, a lot of those technological spaces have been dominated by large corporations. And, you know, although we are progressing with rapid technological change, I don't think it's happening in the same way as it once was, right? And I think that green tech, at least from my perspective as somebody that's an outside observer, is still this respite for American innovation the way that I think it is, like, you know, a handful of smart people getting together and changing the world. Mm-hmm. Do you feel the same way?
I don't. You mentioned American innovation, but it is really when you are starved of a certain service or some that where innovation really comes to fruition. Like if you live in Kenya and you have a need, you start innovating, you start inventing things. And same in India. When there's a desperate need, you invent something to fill that need. So we're not personally in those desperate kinds of situations, but at a larger scale that you're talking about, the GE Vernovas of the world are relying on the startups from Greentown Media. Oh, geez. There's a Green Tech Media that a friend of mine started. But the incubator that you're referring to is called Greentown Labs. It's become the largest climate tech incubator in the country. And there they see a problem and they start innovating to come up with a solution. And the Greentown Labs combines corporates like GE Vernova and Veolia who want to partner with these startups to bring these new technologies into their supply chain, which is an incredible marriage that Greentown provides. And the same thing is happening with companies like The Engine in Cambridge, where their motto is tough tech. Both organizations right within a 10-mile radius of each other are taking in all of these graduates from Northeastern, Harvard, MIT, BU that have the innovations, but once they graduate, where is the infrastructure for them to continue to develop these technologies? Well, these two organizations have become the landing pads for these graduating students to prove out the technology and partner with these larger corporates that are part of these incubators to bring it into their supply chain. And just to give your listeners some hope about some examples that are coming out of Greentown Labs, there's Form Energy that when we think of batteries, we think of lithium-ion batteries, but they're taking iron and controlling the oxidization, the rusting of iron to somehow be able to build out really low-cost storage. And we're not talking about 4 hours that lithium-ion does. We're talking large-scale, 14 days of storage to complement wind and solar. There's a company called Sublime that the cement industry is so energy intensive. You need to mine for limestone. You need huge amounts of thermal energy and heat to produce cement. And they have figured out an electrochemical process to eliminate that thermal energy need and eliminate limestone. And they're going to turn that industry on its head and make money doing so. There's an earlier stage company called Atacama. When you talk about recycling, the reason why it's so important that recycling is successful is because all of our plastic comes from petroleum, either oil or gas. And the one example of plastic is the thin film packaging that you always see when you get your Amazon package. You cut out the thin film and there's no way to recycle it. It goes into the trash. Well, Atacama is going to be manufacturing that thin film plastic from what? Recycled cardboard and biomass. When I talk about biomass, an example is when a food processor is manufacturing peas, there is protein waste that comes off of that manufacturing. So they're going to use that waste combined with the recycled cardboard in order to manufacture translucent plastic packaging that does not involve petroleum anymore.
Interesting. Yeah. Let's zoom out for a second, because I feel like a lot of the innovations that you're mentioning are very specific. But right now, Los Angeles is on fire, and it's, many people would say that that's a direct result of climate change. Where do you feel is the biggest need for climate technology? Like, and do you feel like, was that just a mismanagement of resources? Like, what was some climate technology that we can look for and say, okay, like if we implement this, that kind of stuff may not happen anymore?
Mm-hmm. It's not a silver bullet from one technology. It's going to be a combination of nuclear, wind, solar, and storage is going to be a big part of that solution. When you talk about the grid, you used to produce that energy from coal, transition to natural gas, and now we're thinking more and more around, where do we get that generation, and it has to come from cleaner sources than something that's coming out of the ground that is finite. So a big gap one of the ways that is going to fill that gap is distributed generation, solar and storage. If you can tap all of the areas, let me take a step back. A big problem with deploying these new technologies, NIMBY, not in my backyard. And so if you can utilize the space where you're going to be using the energy, those are buildings, right? And so there are innovative technologies and financial mechanisms to rent space on your building. So you can take 800 buildings, deploy solar and storage, and that replaces 3 Mile Island nuclear generation. And so all these things combined are going to be needed to take out the
tail end effects of climate change.
Yeah, basically to replace fossil fuels. And if we don't replace fossil fuels going into the environment, we're not going to be able to stop or at least make a dent on climate change.
Yeah, no, I hear that, and I agree that energy is probably the part that I'm most hopeful about. I mean, we have a fusion reactor being built just a few blocks from here. I'm really hopeful that we're going to be able to fix the problem of energy causing a lot of the climate change. But right now, like we're in it, right? Mm-hmm. We're seeing the effects of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there is climate technology that's happening that is a little bit more geared towards the end result of it, right? Like, I mean, and not only geared
are you talking resilience?
Resilience, but like also desalination plants, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, if that's something that is a technology that's being built about, as somebody who's an outside observer, I might not have the same kind of insight that you do, being in the space. I look at California and the wildfires that it's experiencing as my layperson understanding. But my background is not in climate technology. I look at that as like a water problem, a resource allocation problem, administrative burden problem, and I don't know if there's going to be a silver bullet, but I know that for a lot of the climate change, as in the temperature getting warmer, I'm very hopeful about fusion. What are you hopeful for like kind of like the end human impacting results of climate?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. I don't think one person knows how to answer that. I think
That's a tough question.
Yeah, it is a tough question, and I really wish I had an answer. If a few years ago, it's like we're so reactive. A few years ago, that one of the wildfires, it was caused by a utility company. Their transmission wires caused that fire, and so all eyes on utilities and how to make the utilities safer and put the wires underground and you have more distributed energy. And these fires recently in Los Angeles were caused by something unrelated, and so you're trying to put out figuratively and literally putting out fires in terms of solutions and causes. And the answer lies in many different solutions. And I think my mindset coming from this incubator, Greentown Labs, is more around multiple technologies resolving specific problems rather than a fusion resolving 90% of the problem.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And I think that that's probably how most technological progress happens. It's like a war of inches, right?
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to see it happening directly now, as opposed to being this like hypothesis that people talked about. And that's something that I feel like, I don't know if I have the answer either, but it's something that I look towards people who are in the industry, and I want to know what they have to say about these kind of end result impacts of climate. But all that being said, like, if we were to take whether it's like the end result impact or the beginnings of climate change, like what are you most hopeful for in the climate tech space? Because I feel like everybody in biotech is just so interested in genetics right now. It's like so in vogue. If you were to talk about AI or robots, like there's very specific things that people are just like a buzz about. But what's the buzz in climate tech? Like what are people talking about? What are people excited about?
Yeah, I think people are excited about storage and innovation in storage. I think people are excited about the AI is causing the whole power industry to rethink about how we're going to double the capacity of the grid just to be able to provide power to these hungry servers running AI applications. And that is going to force innovation. And I think I'm most excited about the innovations that will come from that desperation that we're now seeing to double capacity on the grid. Some innovations that I don't know what's coming down the pike, but other innovations like Bill Gates is really focused on, micro nuclear, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the storage capacity that is coming from companies like Form Energy. I'm excited about just this need that is. Look, over the next 4 years, we all are probably the people who are listening to your podcasts are probably pretty scared about, the policies that are going to be put in place, the lack of financial support for climate tech. But what I'm seeing lately is that people are starting to take more action because they know that they can't rely on the federal government anymore.
Yeah.
And so we all have to do our part locally to make our own changes. More people are going to be composting. More people, like scientists, are going to look for innovations in recycling, like Green Labs recycling, and new products that they can purchase that are more sustainable and less harmful to the climate. So we're all taking more action, knowing that we can't rely on government over the next 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're as mutually exclusive as most people think. I know that there is a trend away from climate focus, but I feel like again, an outside observer, I'm seeing a lot of parallels. Like when you're talking about the need for more energy, now you have all these people looking to green technology to provide that energy. Right?
Yeah.
And so, so much I feel like of the green space is changing human behavior. Right? And so that is going to come not from like, I'm making this decision because it will benefit the climate, but I think it's going to become because, like, just like you said, we have to make this decision. And I feel like we're getting to that point with all these different needs that we have as a society that we're getting to the place where we have to make that decision. So I'm very optimistic about the green space. I mean, just from my own personal life, I see even people talking about it, right? Like, I mean, when you were growing up and I was growing up, it was kind of like this fringe aspect of science, this fringe aspect of technology, and now it's such a motivator for all different aspects of technology. So I do think that it's gonna get better, and it's nice to hear from people like you that are actually making it better.
Yeah.
But we actually are coming to the end of our time, and at the end of our time, we always have 3 very general questions that we have for all of our guests that are coming on. The first of which is, I a lot of my motivation for what I'm doing and also what I'm interested in comes from science fiction, which is specifically utopian science fiction. I look at all of those amazing different paradise visions of humanity and like, I want that, and that's something that I'm so hopefully trying to work towards and inspire others to make those connections and make those steps towards that brilliant future also. But where do you gain your motivation from? Is there a specific thing that you look towards, or is it more of like a general thing? What makes you devise all of these different climate technologies that you're working on a regular basis?
I get my motivation from the people around me, and every time I get a coffee at Greentown Labs and I meet another founder and I ask how progress is going, it goes into so many different conversations that end up supporting one another in the innovation process, in the innovation trail. And I'm hopeful that as a community, we're all supporting each other and in turn supporting the climate.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very salient point, because so much of innovation throughout history is because different people are talking to each other and sharing ideas. And that's something that, incubators, I feel like, especially, I've never participated in one, but it's cool to see that happening at your incubator.
Yeah. I'm reading this book called The Material World, how the sand is used for building semiconductors, and the Industrial Revolution was created by the steam engine, right? And the steam engine was enabled because there was one person who was passionate about steel and another person who needed pumps for mining. And those two people got together and they were able to build a steam engine with the steel that withstood the kind of pressure that these pistons were putting on the device. And it is an example of what you just said. You can't do it alone. You need the support in society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I'm sure it's just such an interesting part to be associated with, right? Like you have this idea of building a business, but then you also have just like the camaraderie and the socialization that you experience in the incubator itself. I can see how that could be super motivating.
Yeah, and commiserating as well.
Yeah. So second question, where do you see climate technology in 10 years? Like, or where do you hope that it goes in 10 years?
I hope that the innovations that are happening, that are being developed, end up in the supply chains of larger corporations like GE Vernova, which is right down the street, Veolia, all the corporates that are supporting the Greentown Labs. They're all hungry to deploy new technologies, and as soon as the corporates and the startups are working together in this huge supply chain, that's when we see the impact of these innovations. And for me, I try to have a laser focus on what's going to drive the most improvement over 10 years in climate tech, and that is when corporates deploy new technologies coming from climate tech.
Yeah, no, I wonder what that looks like in reality. Like when you're saying that you're going to have these larger scale corporations that incorporate this, is this just like a more recycling based society? Is this going to be like less extraction of resources because we're reusing that stuff? Like what do you mean by that?
So just an example of Form Energy, if the problem of wind and solar is you can't produce 24/7, then these large-scale 14-day storage solutions enable you to use wind and solar as just as reliably as you would a nuclear plant or a plant operated by natural gas.
Interesting. Yeah. So definitely more of an energy mix would be really great for everybody.
Yeah.
I feel like.
And so this example, GE Vernova invested in Form Energy, and that combination is going to be really powerful because GE Vernova is a powerhouse in electrifying the world, and incorporating this type of storage will make an impact.
Mm. So last question, as someone who's in medicine myself, I feel like a lot of the different technologies are interesting to me as an outside observer. I feel like specifically, I just can't get enough of robotics. I can't wait till we have a human type butler that's able to, wash my dishes and fold my laundry. So I just can't get enough of it. What technology other than climate tech for you is something that you're super interested in and you just can't get enough of? You're just like really interested in.
Good question. Before I answer it, I have to ask you a question. When I had my hernia operation, mm-hmm. the first thing I thought the day before is, I hope my doctor got good sleep. And then I think about, well, a robot doesn't need sleep. Mm-hmm. And I would be because of the variables of a human being, of a doctor needing sleep or having a bad day. I think, God, when are robotics going to take over that operation? Yeah,
so right now, when we're talking about robotic surgery, we're really talking about telerobotics, which is just like a video game, right? Mm-hmm. Like I use certain instruments that allow me to remove any handshake that I have, allow me to get into corners that I might not be able to get into with the dexterity of my hands. And so that is present right now.
Mm-hmm.
And in specific fields, it's become very popular. Like robotic assisted surgery and general surgery has become a really burgeoning field. I think the idea of a robot doing it independently, number one, scares a lot of people because even in the best of hands, you can have complications. And I think also number two, when it comes to the ability to think laterally, the creativity that's required for surgery, because no two human beings are the exact same. I think that's something that's going to be a while for robots to take over. Like the decision-making process of like an internal medicine physician, where you come in with a rash and you can think about all the different differentials and prescribe something that is most likely, boils down to statistics, right? Like it's more statistically likely that you have this versus that.
Yeah.
So it's much easier for AI to replace something like that. The decision-making portion of that of diagnosis is going to happen rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're talking about true robotics, like hand-eye coordination, the ability to use your brain and figure out what's happening, especially in situations like, let's say, like I nick an artery or something like that, the ability to respond to that rapidly. I don't think that robotics are anywhere close to the point where we're going to be able to do that. And there's also the question of liability, right? Like who's liable if a robot makes that complication happen?
Mm-hmm.
So I think human beings are going to be very in demand for surgery for a long time. Famous last words, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think telerobotics is going to be really interesting to watch because I know that it definitely corrects for all of those things that you talk about. Like if I have poor sleep and I'm drinking coffee, my hands are shaking.
Yeah.
I might not be at 100% for that patient as opposed to a patient that I've like slept well and I've done all of these other things. So there are robots out there that help correct for that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the other portion of this conversation is efficiency, and to set that robot up, to put the patient in the exact position where the robot has the ability to see it in 3D space, that takes a little bit longer than a human being just walking in, gloving and going at it.
Sure.
So I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon for the full robotic component.
Mm-hmm.
I think telerobotics, there's a good chance that in 10 years, a lot of surgery will be done with telerobotics.
Right. And what happens when a surgeon doesn't get sleep?
With telerobotics?
With actual operations.
Oh, right now? Yeah. I think most surgeons know their limits enough because there's such a negative punishment if you mess up, right?
Mm-hmm.
The liability aspect, medical malpractice, or even any sort of complication, it's in the back of everybody's mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that most surgeons would cancel the first patient if like they were up all night because they were violently vomiting.
Right.
Like I don't think that very many people would go in that type of situation. I think we are pretty good at knowing our own limits just because of like the negative aspects. You're always going to have bad apples out there, but I think that most surgeons went into the field not to make a lot of money. It's a calling, right? And so with that calling, there comes a certain sense of responsibility to their patients.
Mm-hmm.
So I think most surgeons would stop if they haven't had enough sleep. And also, I know that this is kind of an unpopular opinion, but we've also been trained to operate in worse conditions. Like in residency, like you're not sleeping a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've even had certain surgeons that I worked with that the surgery was 24 hours long. I remember specifically in residency, a neurosurgery operation that I was in that was 24 hours long. We were removing a brain tumor. Like we couldn't take breaks.
Holy shit.
And that guy was, one of the best surgeons that I ever worked with. Like he asked me to take a break, and I didn't want to be the one that walked out first. So like the both of us were operating until 24 hours. He let his physician assistants go and be replaced. But the point is that I think that there are people like that can do stuff like that,
Interesting.
And I think that they would be the first person to say, this is outside of like my scope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they would create a system that it was safe. Like maybe they would have people that switched in and out. But like lots of surgeries, especially complicated surgeries that happen, just up the street at Brigham are very long surgeries. And they create systems in place to make sure that it's safe for the patients.
Interesting. Thank you for that perspective.
Yeah, no problem. A long-winded answer.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's it's a multifactorial thing to say, like, if my surgeon doesn't have enough sleep.
Yeah. So back to your question around what technology or technologies I'm most excited about. So lately I generally like the idea of utilizing what we have in front of us to replace something bad. And when you look at all the plastic wrapping that we use, if we can produce that without petroleum, I think those kind of things get me excited to reuse something like cardboard and peas, or producing a product like this Sharps container from the material that we have in front of us. But lately, I've been obsessed with the transition of putting solar on your home without committing to putting it on your roof, because so many people are in that mindset of, oh, I can't put solar on my roof right now because my roof is probably going to last another 5 years. What if it goes longer? Is there a intermediate step that we can all take that to just be able to take a few solar panels, charge a battery, and have that battery charge your electric car? Keep it really simple, and that does not exist today. And we started this conversation around what is the big thing I'm most excited about that is going to solve climate change, and I reduce it to millions of small innovations, or many innovations rather than one large innovation. And I think that's a need for me, because my wife won't let me put solar on the roof. And if I can't find a company that can produce a system that uses 3 solar panels that goes into a battery, and from that battery charge my car, I'll make it myself.
Yeah, that's cool.
Just like I did with the coolant necklace.
Yeah, no, I'm very interested in that, and all the best to you in creating that new technology. But outside of climate tech space.
Oh, outside of climate tech. Sorry.
So like for example, for me, I'm interested in like the medical robotics aspect of it so much as like I can't wait to have a personal robotic assistant that's able to water my plants, and like what are you looking at on your news feed that you're just like, oh, that looks so cool, but it's not related to what you're doing?
Lately, I just took a foiling lesson in San Diego with my kids. Foiling.
What is that?
It's so there's kiteboarding.
Okay.
Where you take a kite that you're harnessed into, but foiling is simply a kind of a surfboard that has a secondary surfboard under the water, and as the kite that you're holding drags you across the water, that the whole board lifts up on the secondary foil underneath, hydrofoil, exactly. And I took a lesson, and I'm really passionate about using that the next time we go camping in Maine.
That's cool. Well, listen, thank you so much for being on the show, and thank you so much to our listeners, our subscribers. We really appreciate all the support that you're giving to us. If you don't mind clicking the like and subscribe button, that would really help us out. And for those of you guys who are tuning in on a regular basis, I will see you again in the future. Have a great day, everybody.
We appreciate you taking part in today's episode. Take this chance to reimagine a better future by joining a community of futurists who strive for a remarkable world. Be a part of this growing network and contribute to making the world a more positive place. Visit thefuturistsociety.net and subscribe to the show so you don't miss a drop of hopeful futurism.